Welcome back, everyone. Let's talk a little bit about neuroplasticity. This is a term that is tossed around fairly frequently when talking about the brain and mindfulness, but there's not always a definition that accompanies it in the discussion. So in the simplest terms, neuroplasticity is saying that the brain is shaped by experience. This was not always believed. It wasn't always the case that science understood our brain as being this continuous, malleable piece of ourselves that was able to change its formation, its framework in seeing the world and being able to internalize or process our place in the world around us. But we have found that we are able to very much have an impact on how our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors interact with one another just by bringing awareness to it. Now, through mindfulness activities, we see that those who are more mindful have greater skill sets in concentration, attention, and awareness. Now, why is this important to know? Well, we know that the brain is really made up of two parts, if we want to separate it fairly plainly, where you have the new brain and you have the old brain. The new brain is made up of the prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobes, areas that evolved in humans as we know them last in terms of our evolutionary chain, whereas the old brain is more of that primal piece that sits closer towards the brainstem and the housing place for the amygdala, which we talked about a little bit earlier, that emergency response system that gives us that fight-flight response, which floods our brain with cortisol or adrenaline, depending on the situation, which can be activated just by your imagination. So one of the things that we see in the studies that have been done between those who practice mindfulness and those who do not is that those who practice mindfulness are capable of staying in the new brain better than those who do not. In fact, those who practice mindfulness have been shown to have a smaller amygdala. It decreases in size, allowing us to not be pulled down into that old brain as easy or for as long of a duration as those who do not practice mindfulness. Now, that isn't to say that when you practice mindfulness, you're still not going to experience situations of stress or situations of negative emotions that are going to draw you back down there, but your ability to recover is going to be quicker, which is kind of cool. I have a quote that I found that was done by Judson Brewer of the University of Massachusetts Medical School. One of the things that he'd said was the posterior cingulate cortex is triggered when we think about the past, future, our minds wander, immoral behavior, guilt, liking a choice we made, etc. And then we start moving on autopilot. We find that those who are expert meditators or practice mindfulness can prevent this from taking over. So one of the things that we know is that when we're experiencing guilt, when we're contemplating a choice that we've made, when we've had immoral behavior, when our mind starts wandering, when we start experiencing instances of depression, anxiety, fear, we are pulled back into the amygdala, and it essentially releases this emergency system and keeps us from responding in what ways might be more beneficial for us in the long run. And that is something that we want to try to prevent. It's something that we want to take more notice of. So by practicing mindfulness, by practicing these skills, we can see that we spend more time in our brain where there's more attention, more concentration, more awareness there in the new brain. And this is something that's going to bring more happiness because we're going to be more interactive with the world around us instead of being on autopilot and just responding to those ingrained primal elements of our human body.